This is the Adobe Illustrator CS5 Setup procedure to work with your universal laser systems. To start, open up the program after you install it. As the program is opening, make sure that you do have it installed properly. You should come up with just a base screen when you first install it, allowing you to open up a specific type of a document. What we want to do the first time that you install it and open up is actually select on Basic RGB Document. Once that is selected, you will have another screen that's going to pop up that indicates several different options. We need to specify the specifics for the laser machine that you have purchased. The first thing is we can put in a name such as your type of laser machine. In this case, I'm going to put in a VLS 4.60, or you can type in universal laser or whatever associated name that you would like. The next point is we need to make this, after it's an RGB template, we need to put in the name, and then we need to change the width and the height of the page to match your machine. Now you can change the units to inches here, which I'd recommend to set the size, or metric if necessary. And then change the size to your machine. If your machine is 24 inches wide by 18 inches tall, we'd put that in for a VLS 460. If you have a 12 by 24 inch machine, you would have a width of 24 long by a height of 12. There's also a 12 by 16, 18 by 32, and a 24 by 48. So make sure to put in the correct size that your machine is actually associated to. Make sure your orientation is on landscape. It should automatically select that when you put in the correct orientation over here. And that is really the only adjustment that needs to be put in at this point. Now we will select OK, and our page will actually show up on the field. The next thing is we want to show the rulers to match the machine to position and orient our graphics and parts to that. And so to do that, we need to go into View, and then Rulers, and then select Show Rulers. You can also hit Control plus R, and you can see on the top of the screen, on the left side of the screen, we now have X and Y rulers which are matching the laser machine. 0, 0 is located in the upper left hand corner, and so that if we position something at 6 inches by 6 inches, we can reference to that. The next thing is we want to adjust the stroke weight so that when we cut something, the laser system will can be recognized and to cut. If your stroke weight or your line thickness is too thick, the laser will engrave it and it won't show up and actually cut. So to do that, what we want to do is come up to the stroke weight, and we want to put in, if it's points, it would be 0.01 point. And you can hit enter at this point. If it's inches, you can put in 0.001 inches, both of which will work. The thinnest line necessary for the laser to identify it as a cut path. Now, in order for the laser to see it as an engrave or a cut, or if you cut or engrave, it needs to identify color. So the next thing is we need to actually set up the swatch or your color palette for Adobe Illustrator. To edit the swatch, what we would need to do is go in and actually change the swatch mode. So we would go into our drop-down menu window, and there should be one indicated swatches. And that's their word for the color palettes versus other software. Swatches would be selected, and then you're going to have a color palette show up on the right side of the screen. This is your master swatch. Since we're an RGB based page, it should only bring up RGB paged or type colors. And so what we have here is we have a color palette that virtually matches the color palette of Universal palette in our printer driver. And in order to do this, to get it set up exactly, we need to make a few modifications. Now, our color palette has a specific order. If you want to match that order, you can grab these colors and you can actually move them around. So if you want the green to be before yellow, you can move that around and you can actually get it. So the order of our color palette is black, red, green, then blue. So if we want to move the blue over here, and then we want to go to yellow, and then magenta, and then cayenne. So magenta would go over here, so it's matching cayenne. And then the last one is orange. Well, we have a few extra colors in here, as you can see. Now you can go through and actually delete the colors by selecting it and then selecting the little trash can in the bottom right hand corner, as you can see right here. And when we hit that, it's going to ask you, do you want to delete it? I'll hit yes. And you can do this to every color that you don't want to keep. And you can actually delete these all the way out if you'd like until we've got nothing less. Now, orange is the last color in our color palette, and it's not a standard RGB color in the standard swatch, and so we need to create it. And to do that, what we'll need to do is just double click on that color, and then it's going to allow you to actually come into an RGB color orange. Well, we need to actually put in a specific type of percentage of RGB, which is red, green, blue. Red needs to be 255, so we're going to scroll that all the way up. 255 is the maximum. Green, which is the G, is going to be 102, and I'm going to type that in. And then blue, RGB of the blue, is 0. So this is the actual color itself, and so I can now come in and rename it if I want. I can say RGB orange, and then we'll hit OK. Now when you hold your mouse onto it, it'll say RGB orange, RGB cayenne, magenta, and those are the only ones we want. And I can come through and I can delete the rest of them. And you can go through and actually delete every single one that you don't want. If you use the palette for other items such as graphics design and stuff like that, this is not necessary, and I'm not going to go through and actually delete every one of them. And I also recommend keeping the grayscale. They're all part of the shade of gray or black, and you'd use the black power setting, but the grayscales will give you different halftone patterns, so leave those as well. Once we have this set up, we can then select the colors. And you can come over to the stroke. You can identify whether or not you want the red outline to be done, and so that when you actually draw a line, you can set it for either no fill and with a red outline, so that when you have that line, you got a very, very thin red line, which you can barely see here. So that is the way to set the swatch up, and you get the orange and all the actual colors for it. Now, to make all this stay, so that when next time you open this up, we need to set this up as a template. And you can click the little pull away here to get the colors to go away, and if you want them to come back, you can also use them up here. So if I want to pull them, you can see the same colors that we've just recently done are located in our our swatch. And so if I want the fill to be red or green or blue, I can do that as well. So if I want this to fill black, I can fill that with black, or select this and then fill it with black, and it'll fill your color black. So I have a black box with a red outline in this case. So I'm going to delete that. And the next step is, again, we're going to set the template up so that this next time you open the program, you don't have to go through and set this process up each time. What you will do is you're going to go to your file, and we're going to hit Save as Template. So we're going to hit Save as Template. And now we can set up, before we named it as VLS 460, so we can come in and do that again, or you can call it Universal, whatever you want. I've done one in the past here called Universal, so I'm going to call this VLS 460, and I'm going to hit Save. What this does is it saves your page size, your line thickness, your color swatch, your rulers, all those little options, and any other options that you may like in the setup of your program. If you're a familiar Illustrator user, this is a good option, so that each time you have it set up, or if you have another printer, you can set up the field sizes for that. So that when I close the program down, in this case I'm going to close it down, and then I'm going to open it up again. Instead of starting a new RGB document, in this case, it should give us the last items that were actually used, or we can actually come into and click on template, or the recent items which were done here. I can click on From Template, and it's going to give me the option here, or I can click the recent items here, which is the VLS 460, and it's immediately going to kick into our setup. Now, one issue that I have had is the stroke weight likes to always go back to 1 point, and even an Illustrator execs haven't been able to tell me why that don't save in a template. But everything else does. Your swatch that we set up here, if I were to get rid of the other colors, but you can see I have an RGB orange, I have a page size, I have the rulers, everything else is set up here. Now, when you go to print something to the laser, say we come in and say I want this to be the color red, and I want it to be a 0.001. So I have a red line. When I print that to the laser, the one issue that we have run with this driver or not the driver, with the interface to our printer driver, is that it rotates the page on the screen here. This is not a big deal. You can disregard that. Just think of this as rotated. Or you can come in and define the driver, and you can play with these settings to get it right. But just disregard the fact that it is rotated sideways, and then you can click on Setup. And then you can click on Preferences. And you can select your material or your manual control driver at this point, and you can put in your power settings. So say we're cutting out a piece of hardwood, I would hit OK, I would hit Print, and then you would have to hit Print again. That's allowing you to actually put in the power settings. And then we can go into our control panel by selecting the little red icon on our printer driver. It should show up red just like that. If it shows up grayscale, that your line thickness is not correct, or your color swatch is not correct. Those two things will keep a red line or a green or a blue, any one of those, from working. If it shows up as grayscale, either the color is wrong or the line thickness is wrong if you're cutting or vector engraving. So that's why I wanted to show you that. But as you can see, the orientation is correct. If I hit close here, you can see the orientation on this screen versus the screen here matches exactly. 1-to-1 ratio. If you move it into the screen in Illustrator, it's going to in turn print to that same location. That's it. Make sure you open up your template each time, and you're now set up to run with your Universal Laser system.